Hello, it's time for Combat Patrol Carnage. So we're back with issue 9 today, and we have our new lore and read articles. So we discover the chapters of Space Marines, and we continue our Silver Templar short story. So yeah, some very nice information to cover before we hit into our gaming video, where we have our biggest game yet. Before we head over to the table, then don't forget to, of course, do all the usual. Like the video if you're enjoying the content, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, drop me a comment down below. What's your favourite aspect of the magazine? Really am enjoying the short stories. They are quite nice this time around. Hopefully in the future issues we'll get some that link together and maybe tell a narrative of the different combat patrols we are actually collecting. Don't forget then finally, Combat Patrol Carnage is proudly sponsored by Warbay.shop, your one-stop supply for all your hobby needs. They have everything from new and used models from various different game systems, including Warhammer 40,000, A Song of Fire and Ice, and even Warhammer Fantasy. They also stock a wide selection of paints, paintbrushes, tools, and gaming aids such as dice and tokens. So yeah, check them out. There's a link for them in the video description. Who knows, you might be able to find your next hobby project for a bit of a discount. Alright, with that said, we've got a couple of pages of reading to do, so let's hop to it, and we might even get a bit dramatic with our short story. Back with issue 9 then. So we've put our 2 new paints to use on our models, which is awesome. And now we have some lore to read. So as I said in the previous video, we got the continuation of our short story featuring the Silver Templars, and we even learn a little bit about the Silver Templars as we delve into the chapters of Space Marines. So without further ado, let's adjust the camera and we'll dive right in. So we'll turn the page past our paint guides, and here we have our first new lore article. So this is all about the different chapters of Space Marines. The Ultramarines are one of the chapters of the Space Marines who defend the Imperium. Chapters. Ever since the terrible civil war known as the Horus Heresy, the Space Marines have been divided into chapters of 1,000 warriors each. These are more than mere military divisions. Every chapter is a wholly self-sustaining entity, and each is unique with its own culture, practices, traditions, and ways of waging war. A chapter of Space Marines is something between an army, an order of monks, and a warrior tribe. The Imperium permits the chapters a great deal of independence, and each has its own rich history and culture. Some are fleet-based, crusading across the stars on an endless campaign of slaughter. Others claim dominion over feral worlds, where the tribespeople worship their towering overlords as messengers of the gods, and present their sons for recruitment. A few, such as the Ultramarines, even possess their own stellar dominions. The 500 worlds of Ultramar are known as some of the most vital planets in the Imperium. A chapter is a self-contained entity. Each recruits, trains, and arms its own cadres of warriors. Although most have some kind of partnership with the Adeptus Mechanicus to aid them in their efforts. Few in the Imperium have the ability to command a chapter. Often, the Space Marines are free to intervene in warfare as they see fit. Every chapter is derived from one of the original Space Marine legions, and their cultures are often closely linked. The Ultramarines are one of the first founding chapters, and they have existed since the very earliest days of the Imperium. However, in the centuries that have followed, many subsequent chapters have developed distinctive practices of their own, from the wise mentors to the fanatical Black Templars. Chapters vary in structure, but generally they consist of around 1,000 Space Marines, broken into companies of 100 or so warriors each, and supported by countless serfs, battleship crew, servitors, and other vital support staff. It is rare indeed for a chapter to consecrate all its forces in one spot, but when it does, few can stand before their apocalyptic might. Chapter markings. While the colours and heraldry of each Space Marine vary wildly, nearly all of them wear the emblem of their chapter on their left shoulder pad. It is the icon that faces the foes of the Space Marines as they open fire, ensuring that the enemies of the Imperium know their destroyers. None can say for certain how many Space Marine chapters there are. Some believe there are 1,000, but centuries of warfare and the Imperium's labyrinthine bureaucracy make finding an accurate figure impossible. One thing is certain, each chapter is legendary in its own right. Blood Angels. The Blood Angels are seemingly proud, noble warriors. However, they bear a dark secret. A flaw in their genetic makeup causes many to lose themselves to violence and bloodlust. Silver Templars. The Silver Templars are successors of the Ultramarines. They form close bonds with their weapons, making them deadly fighters when using their chosen armaments. Space Wolves. The Space Wolves closely adopt the culture of their homeworld Fenris. As a result, every Space Wolf is savage, canny hunter who revels in capturing their chosen prey. Dark Angels. The Dark Angels have their own secretive organization and make up use of specialized formations. Their Terminator armored Deathwing is feared across the Imperium. So, breaking from novice, the Blood Angels, of course, are artisans, creators of many great artworks, but they do have the deep, dark flaw, of course, the Red Thirst and Black Rage. So, yeah. Most commonly referred to as space vampires due to them having quite a bit of a bloodlust in battle and have been known to feast off the blood of their enemies, especially those that fall to the Black Rage. So Silver Templars, yeah, they're Ultramarine successors. They take pride in wielding the weapons that they have crafted over their years of service. The Space Wolves, as the saying goes, there are no wolves on Fenris, only the Space Wolves. So a lot of people say that these guys are werewolves. Partly true. I prefer to call these guys Space Vikings, as that's what they've usually had a bit of a close connection to, and their mythology is based off of the Vikings. Yeah, the Wolfen, who are a cursed 13th company, have given fully over to the Canis Helix, which is the specific gene of the Space Wolves that give them the elongated fangs that make them look a bit bestial. Finally, the Dark Angels, secretive monks, basically. Think more Knight Templars, the Crusading Knights of ancient England, etc. Broken down into different houses. As it says, they have the different formations. So the Deathwing, their Terminator armored formation of bone-coloured warriors who will hunt down their secret enemy. And then there's the Ravenwing, who make use of blackened armour, speedy vehicles such as bikes, land speeders, etc. And then, of course, we have, as seen here, the Green Wing, the basic infantry of the Dark Angels' third onward companies. So yeah, there we go. A little bit about the different chapters of Space Marine. The weapons of the Emperor are beyond counting. So moving on, we got our second part of our Silver Templars story. Bonds of Honor, Part 2. Come now, young ones. That was a valiant climb, and all of you are one step closer to proving your worth. You have only to survive the remainder of the climb tomorrow, and you will gain leave to enter the sacred halls of Colossus, our fortress monastery, and our home. You may not yet realize what that means, but our home is not merely our stronghold, nor is it just a convenient place to sleep and to eat. Rather, it is a place where the holy work of the Emperor is commissioned and brought to bear. It is the temple where each one of us was born anew into the brotherhood we now share. You too shall have your chance, and if you are reborn and awaken as a Silver Templar, then you will begin to understand the deep meaning of that holy place. If you become one of us, you will no doubt learn of many holy things and many ways in which purity is pursued. I was telling you before of Sergeant Askerton and his squad, how his most precious weapon was lost to him as they flew to battle, how he sacrificed it to save one of his brothers, Mectras, and how he vowed to do all in his power to retrieve it. Well, other things must come before even the most precious personal matters, and loyalty to the chapter and to the orders handed down is one of those. Even losing his precious rifle did not unseat the deep wisdom from Sergeant Askerton's mind, as you will see. Once the transport vehicle that was carrying the sergeant and his squad landed, the Space Marines threw themselves out the door ready to face whatever danger lay in wait for them on the planet's surface. Around them were the shattered ruins of a now dead civilization that once thrived on the surface of the planet. Amid the toppled corpses of the buildings, the warriors stood, and for a moment they took in their surroundings. Perhaps those buildings had once risen to a great height, like our fortress monastery. But now, after the coming of the great devourer, they lay in piles of rubble. From the mounds, the rusted steel bones of the buildings stuck out like husks of masonry, waiting to ensnare or impale the unwary. The men looked to their leader. Would they stand or would they leave and go on the hunt? Somewhere about the planet lay Judgment, Askerton's lost rifle. Having sworn to retrieve it, many of the men wondered, if only for a moment, whether their mission or the weapon was their sergeant's foremost concern. Seeing their indecision, Askerton spoke, but one word that left the men in no doubt that their foremost mission was here in this place. Duty. Encircled by Tyranids, one of Sergeant Askerton's Marines fires back into the horde. As soon as he said this, the squad began to make themselves ready for combat, spreading out into a tight circle with their backs to each other. The ground beneath their feet began to shake with the incoming swarm, for drawn to the landing site were innumerable Tyranid beasts. From a distance, the land itself seemed to come alive and move as if though a liquid were flowing over it. But up close, the flowing carpet turned into a horde of insectile beasts rushing at them in close concert. The strange Xenos creatures crouched low and leapt and skittered towards the squad. Each one gave the appearance of carrying a gun, but, as the more seasoned of the men knew, they were part of these strange creatures' bodies, known as flesh borers to Imperial biologists. These bioweapons do fire somewhat like a gun, and soon the ceramite plates of the brothers' power armor were ringing with the sound of the infernal projectiles as they bounced off. The Tyranids slowed, not through any choice, but because they were coming at the squad faster than the Space Marines could destroy them. Wave after wave rushed in, building up behind their fellows as the Space Marines blasted away at them, each one falling to a single shot from our seasoned warriors. Yet for each one that fell, another took its place, seemingly oblivious to its own eventual fate. And in this lies the great strength of the Tyranid hordes. For how can you battle against a foe so numerous that you cannot kill them without 100 years just to fire enough rounds? Only one mistake, only one weakness in the armor would be enough for such a horde to fell even the mightiest of warriors, as a dam will burst when water finds a single crack. If the squad thought that things were dangerous then, they had not reckoned on a greater foe. The Tyranids seem mindless, but the truth of their mind is distributed among the greater ones of their species. The hive mind it is called, and the agency of the Tyranids is directed through its alien style of thought. A shadow flitted over the Space Marines, and the chittering of the horde intensified. The Tyranid creatures were whipped into a greater frenzy, pushing themselves ever onward towards the besieged battle brothers. Above, the sound of leathery wings filled the sky, and out of nowhere, a huge winged terror descended from above, right into the center of the squad. There stood a Tyranid prime, one of the thinking creatures. The squad turned inward and fired upon it, the rounds glancing off its skin, but as they prepared to close, Sergeant Askerton threw himself into the fray. He drew his remaining weapon, his bolt pistol, and closed on the beast, firing relentlessly into its carapace. The brothers diverted their fire, and one of them called out that the Tyranids were pressing in. The squad turned, and the sergeant and the mighty beast duelled amid their circle of protective fire. Mechtras, still feeling the guilt of costing his sergeant a prized weapon, turned back in to come to his commander's aid. But one of the brothers held him back, and Mechtras suddenly understood that this was to be Askerton's victory, and Askerton's alone, showing that he was a mighty warrior even without his weapon. Under his helmet, Mechtras' face contorted with shame, and he turned away from the fight, fearing that his sergeant would be harmed for want of his weapon. Behind him, Mechtras heard a terrible yell and turned. To his horror, he saw that Sergeant Askerton had fallen. His bolt pistol had slipped from his grip and lay out of his reach. Above stood the Tyranid prime, its wings unfurled in triumph, ready to tear into its prey. Judgment. Judgment is the name of Sergeant Askerton's prized weapon, a bolt rifle. As all Silver Templars do, he crafted it with his own hands. The spirit that lives within the rifle bonded closely with Askerton's spirit in the many battles that they fought together. Through the many hardships and the glorious victories that were won, Sergeant Askerton and Judgment became so close that they were almost the same being. This deep connection, the Silver Templars call the bond martial. The bond is made from the moment of the weapon's creation, and it can only strengthen as man and machine serve together in the name of the Emperor. So there we have it, the continuation of the story, and it's not looking good for Sergeant Askerton. We'll have to wait for the next part to find out what exactly happens. But yeah, that's it for this issue. For this part of this issue, should I say. Yeah, so we've expanded our knowledge on the chapters of the Space Marines. And yeah, we've continued our short story, which is looking really nice. So we can't wait to continue that. I believe it's issue 11. No, I think it might be issue 12 or 13. We get the continuation. But yeah, looking really good for what's to come. But yeah, that's it. So a big thank you to everyone for watching. And a big thank you, of course, to warbay.shop for sponsoring this series. Until next time on Combat Patrol Carnage, stay safe and happy hobbying. Goodbye.